Your teacher, maybe you're teaching at a distance or even face to face. A challenge is always how to engage students and how to get them to apply the concepts that you're covering so that it makes sense to a student. How do you use it in the real world? Today, we're going to talk about posing authentic problems and having students then solve those problems in a way that works in the real world. I'm Keith Dills. I am the Dean of the College of Education at Slippery Rock University and the Pittsburgh Pedagogue. And what we want to talk about today is John Dewey, who really is the father or the initial thinker about how to use problems to get students to think, how to get them to engage. Think about a baby and why that baby learns to crawl. Generally, they don't see parents modeling how to crawl. They don't see other babies how to crawl. They see that rattle on the other side of the room. And to get from where they are to get to that rattle, to solve a problem through trial and error, they're able to learn to crawl. The bottom line is the mind works and thinks in response to problems. And that's what John Dewey realized. He said that teachers should pose problems, but make them authentic when you can. If the problem is over and over again, how does a student get a good grade? Or how does the student please their parents or their teacher? That problem wears thin, so to speak. It loses its edge for many students. Some have the discipline and that's enough. But we as teachers are trying to teach all of our students. So the question is, how can I pose an authentic problem? How can I get students engaged, create ambiguity, throw the mind off a little bit, create disequilibrium, make students curious? So you might say something like this: here are the facts in America in terms of the last election and voting rates, voting turnouts. And here are other countries. And so you just ask students a simple question: what are the trends? What do you see? What does this chart tell you? Now you've got students engaged, and you're asking them just to tell you what they see. But then you can get at deeper questions, which is why. What's your hypothesis? What's going on? And so you start a discussion, you engage students about democracy, you engage students about how certain citizens from different countries respond, and then you can expand the application aspect of our lesson plan, which, remember, we had from previous episodes. You have a bell ringer, you have objectives, you have input, and then there's application. And so you can expand the application stage and provide students with data, with information, and give them time to answer some of the questions that arise out of this discussion. What other countries have higher voting rates? What's different between those countries and those with lower voting rates? What is characteristic about American voters, and what can you hypothesize about why they don't vote at the same rates? And so by organizing these questions, by providing a guidance and how to get some answers to these, and really thinking about this is preliminary, really finding information and developing and enhancing a hypothesis, right? Our educated guess as to why this is, reading what experts say the data shows, and giving folks time to do that. And you might want to shrink the task if you're going to say take 3 or 4 class periods to expand this application stage of turning them into researchers, and shrink the task by providing packets of information that both show one expert's explanation, another expert's explanation, just raw data, and getting students to really consider many different possible explanations for this. But then what you want to do is try to move it forward to possible solutions. What can an 8th grade civics class do? If they can't go out and vote themselves and sort of lead the way in that way, what can they do to influence others? And how can they take the information that they've gathered and their hypothesis as to why people are not voting, and what can they do to persuade others and try to tackle this problem? And so in doing so, you've posed a problem, you've given information for students to analyze and evaluate. And so you're starting to get at what's behind democracy, what's behind active citizenship, what's behind being a responsible citizen, and then the idea of persuading others that are older, above 18, and can vote, persuade them. This is what we've found, and this is what we think you should consider, so that in fact you do make the effort to go and vote. And one way to do that is to say, we're going to create a public service announcement, something that if done well, and you've set folks up into groups of 4 or 5 in a class. So if you have 25 students, that's 5 groups of 5. And you say, we'll take the best of the 5 that are produced, and I'll go to the local PBS station and see if they'll run this as a public service announcement. Or take the audio aspect of this and go to a local radio station and see if they would run this as a public service announcement. And so you've got to teach folks how to use the digital video editing software, and you can do this on Zoom. You can take a screen capture and show exactly how you would use iMovie to capture audio and video, how to go get visuals and create visuals. So that's the technology aspect of things. And you have to have someone that's going to be able to use their camera to or their phone to talk into it and be the narrator, possibly. Then you assign someone to go get the videos or the images or create the images. You can have somebody set out the sort of the cartoon, what's the first scene, the second scene, the third scene, and then have the bullets or the bubbles, showing what people say. So you have somebody that writes the script, and then you have somebody that edits this and puts it all together. So what you want to do is come up with all the roles. You want to explain and describe what the roles are. And if you have 5 roles that need to be done, make sure that they're assigned. So 5 students that each have a role to do. And the culminating project is shown, and then one is picked by the teacher then to submit. And I've done this as an 8th grade teacher, and I've had students say to their mothers as they're driving in the car near election time, turn up the radio. This is a public service announcement that I did in Dr. Dills' civics class. And wow, what a great way to investigate important things about democracy. Nothing more important than active citizenship in terms of voting and participating, learning the technology, working in groups in a team, and producing something that makes a difference, that's authentic. What else could you do? You could pose a problem in physical education and show that, in fact, sportsmanship is what's touted as the reason why we should have sports and play games. But in fact, a lot of studies show that the more kids play sports and then they're involved in teams, the worse their sportsmanship is, as measured by looking at moral reasoning scenarios and trying to identify what the right thing to do in these scenarios. We're finding that non-athletes perform better than athletes, and youth sports participants are better at these sportsmanship tasks than the sports participants. And so if you set students out in groups of 5 again, and you provide them with packets of information for them to research and investigate, and give them questions and say, what behaviors are associated with sportsmanship? If it's a coach, what have we found that coaches do that's tied to increased sportsmanship behaviors as measured by the analysis of moral reasoning, moral dilemmas, and scenarios where they have to exercise moral reasoning. And there are certain behaviors that the coaches and physical education teachers take part in. And so that are aligned to or enhance or are correlated to sportsmanship behaviors. And so, again, what you're doing is posing a problem. Why do we have sportsmanship decrease with the length of time playing? What's your hypothesis? What does the research say, or what do these packets say, experts say they've found is effective in terms of overcoming that problem? And then the question is, what can you do about it? And maybe what you do is you have students create a handbook that then could be distributed to the athletic coaches and even physical education teachers there at the school as advice for how to encourage sportsmanship. How is it that you can produce winning teams and encourage your students, athletes, to produce skills that help them to be successful at the game, but also successful at becoming someone who exhibits sportsmanship and then ultimately applies that to their life, that they that they develop character through sports and participation. So that's an authentic problem. There's research involved. You have them in teams, and then they produce something that's authentic and can be used to solve a problem. Then you will grade, and you can put together a rubric that outlines target acceptable and unacceptable in terms of what you're looking for in a final product, what you're looking for in terms of the different roles that need to be played within the team, and what you would see if you walked into a group meeting, either in Zoom, breakout, or there face-to-face, and what would you see the students do as the camera operator, as the editor, as the writer, as the maybe there's a director involved there. So you want to spell that out in operational terms. What behaviors would you see? And that gives guidance to students so that they can see, oh, this is what's expected of me, and I understand. And then you can use that for your grading purposes as well. It's also helpful if you can show somewhat of a finished product. But of course, you don't want to give it all away. You don't want students to merely mimic what's there, but providing the guidance through the rubric, descriptions of what it is that you would see people do, what your expectations are all helpful. So I'm Keith Dills. I'm the Dean of the College of Education at Slippery Rock University, the Pittsburgh Pedagogue, wishing you all the best of luck as you use projects to get students to apply what you've taught them so that they solve problems that are even beyond the school, the curriculum, and in the real world.